Hello, welcome to the House of Myrrh. This is the name for my YouTube channel because it is based off of my name, which is Maria, and the root of Maria is myrrh. I will probably at some point unpack the connection of that and what it means to me and why I've named this my channel. But for now, welcome to my energetic space. I am creating this channel in hopes of just like creating a platform where I can share things that want to come through from the divine, God, source, universe, spirit, whatever name you use is fine with me, to anybody who is here to listen, honestly. It may be that I'm creating this space for one person. I'm fine with that. It may be that this is just for me because I need to speak and release these things. That's also fine with me. But if it has found you and it has relevance for you, welcome. I am glad that you're here. For the last year or so, no, more like 2 years, I had a space that of a friend of mine who was teaching, and I got to share and create content in that space and share transmissions on different topics for people. And I loved it. I loved teaching in that space. And in December, it kind of came to a unexpected conclusion. And I have had this like teaching inside of me, this transmission, this blessing or understanding that I want to release brewing in me for the last 6 months since then with no space for it to go. So that's why I'm creating this. Maybe I will make one video and this is the end and now I'm done. Or maybe there will be more to come. I don't know. I'm here to be of service. Like I'm here to speak whatever is in the heart and mind of God and as it comes through me. So if that's of interest to you, please feel welcome to stay and listen, to share your thoughts and ideas. If that's not for you, that's totally fine. You don't need to, you can say no, thank you. I give full permission. So with that being said, the content that I was wanting to release and share about in December was on covenant. And as a friend of mine, Sarah, if you're watching this, has said, covenant is my Roman Empire. Yes. For me, this has been such a big way that I have experienced and known God and had God reveal himself, herself, itself to me that I wanted to share because it's not something that we know a lot about in these modern times. So before I do, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Maria. I grew up in a very dogmatic, fundamental Christian, charismatic Christian kind of household. That was my background. After a really rough divorce, I began to have some encounters with God that really wrecked my theology. So like I went through this whole deconstruction process, and how I understand life and God and myself is completely different now. So while I may talk about God, I don't really mean it in the same sense that I would have 10 years ago. And while I may share stories from the Bible, I also don't see those the same way. I do not see them as like a historical record. I see them as energetic stories that are archetypal in nature that carry wisdom and truth for us to access regardless of our walk. So just want to put that disclaimer out there for those of you listening as well. So back to the topic at hand. Covenant. What is covenant and why should it even matter right now anymore? So covenant, as I understand it, is a ritual. And a ritual is a way that humans take a metaphysical, spiritual, esoteric idea and ground it from the archetypal energetic down into 3D reality. So there are words and actions that I take to energetically symbolize the truth of whatever the metaphysical understanding is. Example, I get a ring. right? And the ring is a symbol of the love and the care and the devotion and affection between two people, because the circle is never ending. Therefore, the love and affection and devotion is never ending. And so we have a ritual of purchasing and giving the ring in order to symbolize all that's going on in the non-physical realm, okay? So that's ritual. And the covenant of ritual then is for, or the ritual of covenant is for, some people would say to establish oneness, but I would contend that it is to remember oneness. Originally, covenants were established between God and man to remember that we are not separate from God. We may be in physical bodies, but we are connected to God always. And then they became rituals that were enacted between man to man, or family to family, or even nation to nation. And there were blessings for upholding the covenant or keeping the covenant, and there were curses for when you broke it or violated it. And so we have echoes of this within culture and society now. Like some of the marriage rituals that we go through are echoes of covenant, and once I kind of unpack the symbolism of it, you'll see it. But we don't really necessarily have the wisdom and the understanding of it as it was when these rituals were first downloaded and used and acted. So I would like to unpack that a little. So where did it come from? Covenant was actually a ritual given to Abraham by God. And so this was initiated by the divine. So if you don't know, Abraham, then Abram, his name hadn't changed yet, had a visit with God, and God showed up and said, I want you to move from this city to a place you've never been before, and I'm going to show you wonderful things, and I'm going to make a great nation of you. And Abram said, okay, and he went on this journey with God. Well, and part of this journey was that God showed up to him and told him, I want you to go and get 3 animals. They need to be 3 years old, and they need to be perfect. We'll talk about what that really means. And I want you to use them in a sacrifice. And so he went and got the 3 animals, and he cut them open according to the instructions. You just take it, cut it in half, and there's 2 parts then to symbolize man and God. And God and Abraham walked through the parts. So imagine they're here, and then there's like a figure 8 or an infinity sign walking through the parts. Okay, and so Abraham does all of this, and he goes to sleep, and he has this waking vision of God as a flaming pot of flames, doing the same thing as Abram just did. So doing the walk. And then the promise was given to him, which was part of the covenant, that you will be a father to many nations. Okay. So I want to talk about, there are 7 parts to the covenant ritual, and I want to share what they are and what they mean and where we can see them, so that you can kind of see that we're not separate from the divine. There's no separation. We're one, and we have forgotten that. And so the invitation is remembrance of our oneness with God, with the divine, with the non-physical, and how we're all connected. So like I said, there are 7 parts to this covenant. And the first 2 parts I kind of touched on already, but the first part, every covenant is founded on a sacrifice. So there's the sacrifice and then the blood walk. Okay. Sacrifice is not what we understand it to be. Traditional, our modern understanding of sacrifice is you cut something off, you end an animal's life or a person's life, they die, and they have to die in order for something to be built on top of that. But that's not the best understanding of sacrifice. The reason why the animals had to be perfect, because in Hebrew, perfect doesn't mean no issues. It means whole and complete. And the age of the animals was important because it was 3 years. And so there's the one and then the other, and then the joining of the 2, which creates the 3rd. And that 3 represents the full maturity of that animal, of the sacrifice. And so a lot of people will use sacrifice as sacrificed my time to make money. No, that is a cutting off. That is a distortion of what real sacrifice is. Real sacrifice is in our wholeness and completeness, opening ourselves up to become like a foundation or like the garden level of something so that it can grow forth from us. It is not death. I'm not saying death's a bad thing, but it's not death. It's not an ending. It's not a cutting off. It's not a tearing apart. It is a opening up of wholeness. That's the first piece. And so all covenants are built on a sacrifice. And that sacrifice is the wholeness or the completeness of the thing, opening itself up, the person, God, whatever, opening themselves up in their wholeness, in their oneness. Okay. The second part is the blood walk. And in the blood walk, like you walk the figure 8 between the two pieces of the sacrifice, and you will say the blessings of what you will receive from this covenant of oneness with the other person or with God. So blessings on one side, and then the curses if you don't on the other side. And again, like there's not a full understanding of this from what I have seen and as I understand it in my own experience of covenant with the divine. So the curses are not like, if you do bad things, your bad things are going to happen to you. It's, you're one now. Anything you do to the other, you are doing to yourself. There is no separation. So it's not like you get cursed. It's anything you do to the other, you do to yourself. Anything I do to somebody else, I'm doing to me, whether it's a blessing or a curse. If it's a good thing from like the wholeness and the love and the care that I have in my heart, then I will feel the same thing because we're not separate. But if I don't understand that we're one and I swing at you, it's going to hit me. I reap what I sow because we are one. There's no separation. And so those were the two most fundamental parts of the covenant ritual. And then there came another section. So as I understand covenant and my experience with God around covenant, because I have lots of experience with God talking to me about covenant. This is the first part. There's like 3 sections. First part, sacrifice and blood walk. Then there's the second part and a third part. And then the second part, there are the exchanges. So there are 3 exchanges that take place within a covenant ritual. 1, your names. So I receive a new name from you if we're creating covenant, establishing covenant, and you give me a name also. We still see this within the context of the marriage covenant. The bride takes the husband's name typically. So, and there was an understanding in the ancient times that your name was your nature. So to receive someone's name was to receive their nature. So when Abram had this encounter with God, he, before that, had known God as like Elohim. But then God revealed himself as El Shaddai. And El Shaddai gets translated as Lord Almighty, but it really has so many layers and context. It can be mighty, absolutely. But it also has the context of like breasts, shad. It's boobs. it's a mother nurturing and providing sustenance and caring for children. And so God revealed himself, herself, itself to Abram as that, and Abraham received a new name. Instead of father of many, it was father of many nations. So there was the exchange of names that takes place. My nature, your nature. We're one. I have the same nature as you. You have the same nature as me. We're one. Then there was the exchange of mantles. So a mantle is like your destiny. So if you've ever heard the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors, and his brother took his coat and beat him and sold him to slavery and made it look like he was dead, that coat represents his destiny, his coat of many colors. And that mantle, those mantles were exchanged within covenant. I cover you. Whatever your destiny is now my destiny. My destiny is now your destiny. Our destinies are now joined together. We're now interwoven. So there was an exchange of mantles as well. And then there was an exchange of belts, which is about resources. Because what do you keep on your belt? You keep your money, your money pouch. You keep probably water sometimes. You also keep your weapon. Everything I have is yours. My armies are your armies. My money is your money. My resources are your resources. Everything I have is yours. And vice versa. Everything you have is mine. So when God makes covenant with man, everything I have is yours. Everything's mine anyway. We are one. Now we're one in a way, in an even more deep way. And so again, these were symbolic acts that were acted out in order to ground an energetic truth that had lain in darkness or unawareness or unconsciousness. Okay, so first section, the sacrifice and the blood walk, then the exchanges, and then the last section, there's two pieces. One was the mark of the covenant. They would literally put a mark, like a cross, an X, on their hands, both, and then the blood and come together. Again, this is kind of like the blood brother thing that maybe you did as a kid. But to say we're one. We're one blood. We're one family. I bear the mark. You bear the mark. We can look at it and see we are one. We have covenanted together. And there's verses in scripture that kind of allude to this. You know, God says in, I think, Isaiah, can a mother forget the baby at her breast? Even if she good, I cannot, because I have engraved you on the palm of my hand. Covenant. We're one. I could never forget you. Right? So there was that, the mark of the covenant. And then the piece de resistance, the final piece of it was then the meal. There was a meal that was had, and this was the bread and the wine and the salt. And this, again, was about an exchange. Like, the cup I drink from is the cup you drink from. We are one. The salt is everlasting. So it is a symbol of our everlasting covenant. This goes on forever. And so all these 7 parts like come together and create this whole ritual to kind of ground in 7 different aspects the remembrance of our oneness with God. And there's been so much of the forgetting of that. Like, so many of us just see ourselves as separate. Like, it's just me here and I'm by myself and I'm alone and God doesn't understand. You are not alone. Like, God knows you and chose you and you are one with him, even if you don't know. You may have been asleep like Abram was, and then God wakes you up to this covenant, to this invitation into the remembrance of oneness with him. And I would contend that all of creation, all of this 3D reality that we see here, our physical bodies, the earth itself, is an outflow and an outpouring of the original creation. Because if you go back to Genesis, God says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The heavens and the earth. 2 parts of a whole. And then it says, and then the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of the Lord brooded over the waters. And God took the light and separated it into day, into night. And then he called it good. He gave it his own name. Let there be light. He's called the Father of lights. He said it was very good. He's a good and perfect Father. Like, there's so many, like, if you go back and read the whole creation story, it is just 7 days of the ritual of covenant, of God treading between the pieces that he opened up out of the fullness of himself to create this outflow of who he is in us, and called it good, because he is good. And we are in the likeness of him. Male and female, he created them. In the likeness of us, let us create man. And so the reason why I feel like this is a transmission to come through right now is there's so much here that could easily separate and divide us. I mean, I see it all over social media. I know you do too. The elections in the US coming up, Israel and Palestine, near and dear to my heart. so many different things, right? So many things to like separate us so that we cut each other off, so that we forget who we are, so that we hurt ourselves because we hurt each other. And in this hour, I feel the fullness of the invitation of the divine to remember, to awaken, to know to the core of who you are that you are not separate. You are not cut off from God, man, creation. It is all one. And so I would like to take like this last little bit here to go into the silence, as Neville Goddard says, and just to kind of like ground this remembrance into our physical bodies. And if that feels good for you, you can stay. And if you feel complete, you can turn the video off. But I'm going to ground it for me because I need it too. So feel free to stay. So I am just dropping out of teaching mode, which for me, like I kind of open myself up and let myself receive what wants to come through. And now I'm just letting myself come fully back down into my body to settle in, to breathe in the truth of what was said, even if I don't remember it. Like I spoke it, my cells heard me, my body heard it. And just to remember my oneness. My oneness with you. My oneness with God. With creation. There is no separation. And this is why in the stories in the Bible, they always said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, Yahweh Echad." This is not a oneness of uniformity, like where everything's the same. All the dimes are the same in the same piggy bank. That's not what this is. This is a oneness in multiplicity. One body, many parts. One piggy bank, lots of coins, lots of dollars, lots of different kinds of things. Each part having its own function and purpose, but not separate from the whole. Connected, joined together, giving life and sustenance to the creation of heaven on earth, the bringing through of an idea or an archetype or an energetic understanding into the fullness of incarnated form. That is creation. And so I just let myself receive from that like non-physical source, that spiritual source that we call God, that we call Father, Mother, Universe, Source, Origin. I let that energetic reality trickle down into me and penetrate me so that I can be filled with a remembrance of who I am. I honor that remembrance. I thank you for this wisdom and this invitation. I ask that each person here who is listening and sharing in this communion of sorts would be blessed to receive exactly what they need. This is for all of us. It's not for one, it's not for several, it's for all. So I bless the hearing of it and the receiving of it and the sending out, so that way may be filled with the remembrance of who we are and our oneness with you. I pray you be blessed, that you have amazing encounters with the divine as well. I hope to share more on here. We'll see what that looks like. I am at his service always. And so I just bless you and send you into your weeks.